Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another TMI girl talk questions that you are probably too afraid to ask your mom or your sister or anybody else in your life. I know that it has been quite a while since we last did this, and I had promised that I will do a Q&A video once we hit 500k. I really apologize for the delay. I was caught up with work and wedding planning and everything in between. It was so chaotic that I just wasn't getting time to sit down and film this for you guys. But I am finally here. So today we are just going to sit down, chit chat with our coffees, chai, coke, whatever you want to drink. And I'm going to try and answer as many of your questions as possible to the best of my ability. Like last time, this video will cover certain topics because if we do everything, it will get too long. But I promise that I will make more of these Q&A videos regularly. These are the things that we are covering in today's video. So go ahead, grab your headphones, grab your coffee or chai, and let's settle down as we chat. Section 1 is feminine health and hygiene. Let's start with the first question. What is the right age to have sex, and how do I make sure that it's actually safe? This is a slightly complicated question to answer because there are two parts to it. One is the legal age of consent for sexual activity in India, that is 18 plus years. And second is your biological readiness, whether you feel ready physically, mentally, and emotionally to have sex. Now, beyond the legal age of consent, and it is there for good reason, your emotional maturity and you genuinely feeling ready to have sex are two things that are extremely important. Now, typically, I would advise, and I know that there's a lot of discourse in public on social media about romantic relationships in your teen years, in your school years, and having the love of your life there and maybe having sex with that person. Sure, that is what exists in pop media and pop culture, but I would typically advise young teens and preteens to prevent themselves from indulging in sexual activity because it can have serious health consequences later in life. You could get STIs, which are sexually transmitted infections, you could get reproductive issues, you could get unwanted pregnancies, and those are not things that you are mentally or physically prepared to handle. Because when you're in your puberty era, your hormones are raging, and as it is, there is very little knowledge about what sex entails, and so it is very easy to make mistakes that you will regret later in life. But even once you are of legal age, let's say you are 18 plus years old and you are watching this, just because you're 18 does not mean that you simply have to go out there and have sex. That is not what it means. You need to know if you are ready to do this. And by readiness, I don't just mean you're curious to do this. I don't mean that you're pressured from somebody you're dating. I mean that you understand what is going to happen, both emotionally and physically, that you feel 100% comfortable saying yes or no at any point without feeling guilty, that you are doing this because you want to, not because your friends are doing it or not because you're scared of losing someone, and that you are prepared for the responsibility that comes with it, including the emotional baggage and the physical safety. Now, when I talk about physical safety, that means 1, preventing unwanted pregnancies, and 2, preventing yourself from getting sexually transmitted infections. How do you do that? Protection, condoms, diaphragms. Diaphragms are like condoms but are worn by women as opposed to worn by men. And ideally, double protection is gold standard, where you use a condom and also a reliable form of birth control, like a birth control pill, for example, or an IUD or a patch or an implant. Now, if you're in your teens or your preteens, doing this without the consent of your parents is obviously not possible, which is also one of the reasons that you should hold off on sex till you reach an age where you have autonomy over your body, where you're able to take decisions for your body by yourself. And that in India does not happen before you are 18. Now, once you do start having sex, or once you start indulging in sexual intercourse, make sure that you get tested for STIs regularly, especially if you have multiple partners, and also ask your partner to get tested before you do anything. It's not awkward. It is very smart to do that. Do not skip that conversation. And if you cannot talk openly about protection, about boundaries, about testing with the person that you're about to have sex with, you are not ready to be intimate with them. And also remember that safety is also about your headspace, right? If you know that you're going to feel guilty, anxious, pressured after having sex, after being in this position, that is a sign that you should wait right now. And honestly, waiting till you're emotionally confident, financially sort of independent, and self-aware enough to set boundaries is going to make the whole experience a lot healthier for you and way less risky. Coming to question number 2, how do I communicate my sexual needs to my partner without feeling shy or awkward? Okay, here's the thing. You do not have to go from zero to let's discuss every detail of my desires overnight, right? Like any conversation that you have as a couple with your partner, especially if you are like in the initial stages of your relationship, it does take time to get comfortable talking to your partner about certain things. So an easy way to build up to this is to start by having more open, more honest conversations with your partner where you can be vulnerable, where you can build that trust, where you can experience what your partner is like in moments where you are feeling vulnerable. And once you start to feel safe, when you start to build that trust, and by talking about normal stuff in your relationship apart from sex, it also becomes easier to bring up the more intimate things. One thing I think that is underrated for breaking the ice, especially when it comes to like conversations of intimate nature, is I think sharing memes, reels, TikToks, things like that about the things that you like or you would like your partner to do. And trust me, there's a lot of content out there. So if you see something online that you want to communicate but you feel hard or you feel awkward communicating right now, you can send that reel to them and initiate the discussion from there. And that makes it a very low pressure way to start a conversation, and it makes it fun instead of awkward, depending on, of course, the kind of partner that you have. And when you are actually in the moment, when you're being intimate with someone, tell them when you like something that they do, right? So if, let's say, they are touching you a certain way and you really, really enjoy that, you ask them to do more of that. And that is basically like positive reinforcement. You're showing them what works for your body without it feeling like criticism. A lot of this common advice on the internet will tell you, you have that conversation and tell them what you don't like. But that usually backfires in such situations, and I feel like positive reinforcement works a lot better. So yeah, try that maybe next time that you're being intimate with your partner. The goal here is not to just instantly be perfect at expressing yourself, hai na? It is to slowly create a space where you can say these things, where you can communicate these things without overthinking. And when it comes to intimate settings, it takes a while for two people to get comfortable with each other, right? Which means that as you start to build more comfort to be able to communicate these things, it might also become apparent to the other person by the way of your body language, by understanding you better. So it just makes it easier to have those conversations the deeper you are in a relationship. Coming to section number 2, which is yourself, your individuality, your identity. I absolutely love the questions in this section, and I love how many of you are taking an initiative to understand yourselves better. So question 1 here is, what are some non-negotiables that every woman should have? I absolutely love this question. This concept of non-negotiables is something that took me a really, really long time to learn, especially because women in most cultures, and more so in India, are applauded for being compliant, for doing things that others expect of them. So when you set non-negotiables, you become a non-compliant woman, and therefore you become somebody who cannot be messed with. You become this force of nature to be reckoned with. So what are these non-negotiables that you should be setting as a woman? Okay, number 1 is building a safety net for yourself, an emotional safety net and also a physical safety net. This is number 1 for a reason, because before love, before family approval, before anything else, your emotional and your physical safety is priority 1, P1, right? And as adults, that safety is kind of in our hands. We can take charge of it, even if we couldn't as kids. This could mean having boundaries in relationships, not letting anybody speak to you in a way that breaks you down, not allowing toxic people to have a constant access to your energy, having the courage to walk away from situations that feel unsafe. On the physical side, it could mean things like being mindful of your environment, trusting your gut, having exit plans, whether that's sharing your location with a trusted friend when you're out, or simply just making sure that you're never stuck in situations that make you uncomfortable. I'm listing these right now because honestly, there's no one method or one core ingredient to suddenly build physical and emotional safety. It takes time to cultivate a safety net, but the best way to do so is to start by understanding and upholding your own boundaries. Because when you start doing that, both physically and emotionally, you are able to create this safety net around yourself that people don't want to cross. The second thing, of course, is financial independence, which is something that I have spoken about multiple times. Even if it starts small, a part-time job, maybe it's freelance work, maybe it's building your own side hustle, or just saving little by little. Financial independence is freedom. When you have your own money, you have choices. And when you have choices, you can choose to leave toxic situations. You can invest in yourself. You can say no without worrying if it will leave you stranded. Financial freedom is not just about money, it is about what money brings to the table. It's about the confidence, the respect, the ability to not depend on anybody else for your basic needs, even for your dreams. And finally, the third non-negotiable you should have as a woman is a support circle. A support circle basically means having at least a few people that you can turn to when things get messy. And they're not there just for gossip or for sympathy, but they're there for actual guidance, to help you with resources, to help you with fresh perspective. And it doesn't just have to be friends, right? It could be a mix of close friends, family members, mentors, even a therapist. Anybody that makes you have that sense of support is a part of your support circle. The basic idea is that you're not relying on just one person like a partner or a parent for all of your emotional needs. If you only have one pillar and that pillar collapses, everything falls flat, right? So you need a circle of people. A strong support circle basically gives you multiple pillars. So even if one pillar shakes, so in case of a divorce for a lot of women, right? If you have a strong circle, you remain standing. You are able to pick up the pieces and rebuild your life without feeling like everything is destroyed. Again, this is something that's built over time, so don't be too distraught if you don't have your ideal circle yet. It's something that takes time to build, and you build it throughout life, and the people in this circle can keep changing throughout life. What is important is that you have a circle. Question number 2 in this section is how to stop needing constant validation. First of all, there is nothing wrong with wanting validation, to be very honest, right? Humans are social creatures, we thrive in community and with praise within that community. It becomes toxic when your only source of self-worth comes from external validation. That is where the problem lies. And in today's day and age, we have outsourced our self-worth a lot, right? It is very dependent on what other people think of us on social media, for instance, or what that person in my office thinks of me, or what my parents think of me, or what society thinks of me. I think the society one has been there all along. But the point is that we've outsourced, or we have a tendency to outsource our sense of self-worth a lot. Step 1 of fixing that would be turning inward for validation instead of looking for it outward. And how do you do that? You do that by starting to keep the promises that you make to yourself. If you say you'll work out 3 times a week, show up. If you say you'll wake up early, do it. Every time you follow through on the promises that you make to yourself, you build trust with yourself. And when you trust yourself, you stop chasing constant reassurance because you know that you've got your own back. And step 2 of this would be to celebrate yourself often and as much as you can. It again took me a long time to learn this, but when you celebrate yourself, you constantly give yourself that validation. That is what you're doing. You're giving yourself that dopamine hit that comes from, wanting validation externally. And when you do this often enough, you stop relying on other people to validate you. Whenever I start to fall for this external validation trap, I have to remind myself that I am my own person, I have my own journey, I have my own pace, and whatever I'm doing is great for me. And that applies to you as well. What is meant for you will come to you at the right time. Stop comparing, because the more you do, the more you block yourself from building that self-trust and being your best self. Coming to question number 3. How do I hold on to my sense of self even in relationships and family life? I think so many people go through like an identity crisis after they are in a relationship, or when they've been in a relationship for a long time and God forbid they break up, or once people have been married for like a certain amount of time and their identities are kind of fused with their partner. And I get it. It becomes difficult to hold on to your sense of self because your life becomes this railroad of responsibilities. But I cannot stress enough how important it is to maintain your sense of self. It is a non-negotiable. So how do you do that? It basically comes down to keeping parts of your life that are yours and yours alone. Things that don't depend on your role as a partner, as a daughter, as a wife, or as a mother. So this means having your own money, first of all, like I said, financial independence, having your own hobbies, having your own friend circle, and having time that you use for yourself, on yourself, without feeling guilty. I think it's very important for women, especially, to set small personal goals outside of their relationships, whether it's a fitness target, maybe it's a creative project, maybe it's a career milestone, so that you continue to grow as an individual, whether you are growing in that relationship or not. And another thing I think that's very important is to keep checking in with yourself regularly, right? Whenever you have a decision to make, whenever you have to do things where you're required to do things, as a part of your role as a mom, a daughter, or a sister, whatever, is to ask yourself, is this choice true to me, or am I just going along with what's expected of me, right? And it's okay to, fulfill other people's expectations and to do them, to fulfill responsibilities that come with your role. But it should not mean that you do it to an extent where you don't have any sort of time or commitment to yourself, right? The healthiest relationships are the ones where both people, right, get to stay whole and not merge into like one blurred identity. And like I said, it doesn't mean you cannot accommodate your loved ones. You can, but don't let guilt trick you into giving up your own life. You have a life and you continue to have a life. You are the only person who stays with yourself till the end of your life. And so you deserve to give yourself that time and attention, regardless of whether you're married or regardless of whether you are in a relationship. Because if you do not prioritize yourself, your goals, nobody else is going to either. Question number 4 in this section: how can somebody avoid developing romantic crushes when they haven't fully learned to love or value themselves yet? Okay, I feel like this needs to be said, but crushes are normal. Okay, you cannot fully control who you are attracted to. What you can control though is how much space or mental energy you give to that attraction that you're feeling right now. If you know that you're still figuring out how to love, how to value yourself, the best thing that you can do is turn the focus inward again. And I think a lot of the stuff that has to do with identity, this is what you need to do. You need to turn the focus back on you. This basically means you build a life that feels full, that feels exciting on its own, regardless of who you are romantically attached to in any capacity at any given point in time, which means having your own hobbies, your friends, your career goals, your self-care routines, everything, so that you're not looking for somebody else to fill that gap. And one practical tip, whenever you catch yourself, daydreaming about a crush or obsessing over a crush, just ask yourself, what do I wish that they would give me? And then find a way to give that thing to yourself. So if it is attention, for instance, give yourself quality time. If it is validation that you're seeking from, a crush that you have, work on something that makes you feel proud of yourself. Just remember that developing romantic crushes, interacting with them, everything is a part of your self-love journey. When you have a crush, it is just a reflection of what you think your life is like. So the next time that you get a crush on someone, notice what that person is like and then try to look back maybe on the crushes you've had in the past 4-5 years ago, the kind of crushes you had back then versus the kind of crushes that you have right now. And you will very clearly see a pattern, because your crushes that you get are a reflection of how you see and treat yourself. And once you self-reflect, it will become very, very apparent. I think it's a fun exercise to do. Try it out if you are obsessing over your crush, and let's see how that turns out. Question number 5. How to be yourself when you don't know yourself properly. Being yourself is not this one fixed thing that you suddenly magically discover one day and you're like, oh my god, this is me. That is not what being yourself means. And I think that's what a lot of us assume when we try to be ourselves. Like, it'll be the spot that we reach and we uncover who we are. Being yourself is like an ongoing relationship with yourself, right? Whatever you're doing right now, that's a part of being who you are. Like me filming this video is a part of me being me. It's an avatar that I have in my life, but it's still me, right? So if you feel like you don't know who you are right now, trust me, that question doesn't really ever go away. And it's not a failure. It's just like a point in your life to understand yourself better. But whenever you're feeling like this confusion of not knowing who you are or feeling like you don't know who you are, you just want to avoid the trap of becoming a chameleon, which is where you shape your identity or your personality to fit the people and the spaces that you're in. When you do this, it kind of feels safe in the moment, but long term, it will like leave you feeling empty because you're living as a version that is built for other people's comfort. So instead of trying to chase like this final destination of becoming you, just focus on self-observation and self-growth. Start noticing what drains you, what versus what energizes you, the kind of people who you feel expansive around versus the kind of people who make you shrink, what activities make you lose track of time when you're absorbed. Journaling helps a lot with this. Personally, I have discovered so much about myself just by writing down whatever thoughts are coming to my head. But if you don't like to journal, just simply checking in with yourself after interactions, after you've done something that leaves you feeling drained, kind of helps you get back on track of understanding, what you want out of life, what you think your life should be like, what you think yourself to be. And I think one important thing to remember here is that you are a multi-layered being, right? Being yourself does not have to mean one rigid thing. You are allowed to be inconsistent. You are allowed to have multiple interests. You are allowed to be multiple things to multiple people throughout life. And you're allowed to change things about yourself. Just because you do something right now and a year down the line you don't enjoy that thing does not mean you're not being yourself. Stop using being yourself as this crutch that makes you fit inside a box. You're a human being, you do not fit inside a box, right? The more you allow yourself the flexibility to be and to do things that you enjoy, that feel authentic to you, the more authentic you become. Basically, being yourself means staying true to what you are feeling and what you are doing in the moment, staying as present as you can, and just taking the time out to get in tune with yourself, to check in with yourself without forcing yourself to fit a label. I know that answer was kind of like all over the place, but so is being yourself, and I hope that helps. Coming to question number 6, how do you accept your body and love yourself when you don't even like yourself? I hear you. As somebody who has had a very rocky relationship with their body for most of my adult life, I know what it feels like to be in a body that you don't like, right? And it's taken me quite a long time to get to a place where I'm comfortable in my body. There are still instances where I feel uncomfortable, where I'll be like, oh my God, I don't like myself much now. But what has helped over the course of many years is not forcing myself to love my body, but instead focusing on respecting my body. Just that shift from how your body looks, and that basically happens when you shift your attention from how your body looks to actually what it does for you. For instance, my legs carry me everywhere, whether it's a rough day, whether it's a good day. Without my legs, I wouldn't be able to enjoy whatever my life has to offer me. My stomach digests my food, my hands let me create, my hands let me film this video. And this shift in attention is so powerful, I cannot even begin to tell you. When I was in the deep end, when I was, just constantly cursing, criticizing my body, I reminded myself of this every single day, that my body does so much for me, and that automatically helped increase the respect that I had for my body. Another thing that helped was building trust with myself, which I've spoken about multiple times in this video, and that just means doing the things I say I will do. So if I say I'm gonna wake up in the morning and go for a walk, I will go for that walk. When you keep promises to your body, like, exercising, drinking enough water, nourishing yourself, resting, again, it shifts that focus from constantly being about your looks to things that your body can do, and that increases the respect that you have for your body. And finally, I would say that it really helps to limit exposure to things that constantly trigger comparison. A lot of our hate for our body or dislike for our body comes from the constant comparison that we subject it to online, right? So you see perfect bodies online and you're like, oh my God, why don't I look like that? When will I ever look like that? And that makes us feel inadequate. That makes us dislike ourselves even more. So it really helps to change what you are looking at, what content you are consuming on social media. If you can, get off social media for a while, and that will do wonders for your mental health, your body image, your self-image. There was a recent study that was done, I'll try and link it down below, where people were told to go off social media for 14 days, and it tremendously improved their mental health, just their focus, everything else about their life. And if you're struggling with body image issues, I think it can be very helpful. Self-love is not this magical leap where you go one day from hating yourself to suddenly worshipping your body. It is like a staircase in Vaishno Devi where you have to take every single step. So you go from, I can't stand myself to slowly, I can live with myself, to slowly respecting myself, to slowly I love who I am. You cannot skip the steps. You cannot magically jump 10 steps. You have to take them one by one. Coming to question number 7. What does a truly secure and healthy relationship with yourself look like? The best way that I can describe this is the relationship that you have with your best friend. A truly secure, a truly healthy relationship with yourself feels like the relationship that you have with your best friend. You keep your own promises, you don't abandon yourself when things get hard, you enjoy your own company, you don't need constant validation to feel worthy, and you also let yourself grow without guilt. Basically, everything you would do for a best friend. When you start doing that for yourself, you know that you have a healthy relationship with yourself. It's basically knowing that you've got your own back no matter what, the same way that a real friend would have your back. And this brings me to section number 3, which is love and relationships. We actually got a lot of questions regarding this, and thank you for sharing your questions, because I know that talking about love and relationships, especially in Indian families, is hard. And I know, as a matter of fact, most women can't talk about these things with their moms or their sisters. So here we are, starting off with question number 1 in this section. How do I know that somebody is the one for me? You guys have asked a lot of philosophical questions. The truth is that there is no one single answer or single magical formula for figuring out the one. But a few signs I think to look out for are: 1, you can be your imperfect self with them. No masks, no walking on eggshells, no overthinking your every move. They respect your dreams, they give you space, and this is huge, because when you are in a long-term relationship with somebody, no matter what anybody else says, space is a huge thing, because you are also both individuals besides being a couple, and you need space to grow as individuals while you grow together as a couple. Another sign is that they respect your dreams, and respect doesn't just mean they tolerate your ambitions, but they actually encourage you to become your best self. So for example, if you want to study in another city or start a business or even take a career break, they're not trying to make you choose between them and your goals. That's a big one for me personally. Another thing is they don't make every plan revolve around them, and they don't see your independence as a threat. Decisions are not just made when it's convenient for them. They discuss with you, they make balanced decisions. They also prioritize your interests, your love, your happiness, like you prioritize theirs. Another sign would be that love feels like calm and trust, and not anxiety and overthinking or constant drama. You feel safe being yourself around them. You don't have to shrink or edit yourself to make them happy. Conflicts with them don't turn into character assassinations. You can disagree with your partner without fearing that the relationship will end. This is something that I've only experienced in my current relationship. Before this, I've had very anxiety-inducing relationships, and so I can confidently say that when you're able to resolve conflicts without turning them into character assassinations, it's a huge, huge win or sign for the direction that you're going into. They respect your boundaries. They don't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. You share core values like how you see money, family ambition, lifestyle, all of those things. I think one sign is if after being in a relationship with a person for a considerable amount of time, you're still questioning if they are the one, then they're not the one. Because if they are, in 90% of the scenarios, you will kind of have that inkling in your gut that this is the person that is meant for you. And one important thing to remember here is just because you find the one, or just because you want to spend, your life with a partner, that does not mean you won't have conflict in your relationship. That does not mean you will not disagree on things. It just means that when you do, you work together as a team to resolve those conflicts, as opposed to just being against each other. And I think that's a big one. Coming to question number 2 in this section: what are some compromises in love and relationships that are okay, and which ones are a big red flag? This term red flag, I think, has become so commonplace. Anytime we do not like a trait in somebody else, it is deemed a red flag. And while certain things definitely are red flags, some things are just minor inconveniences labeled as red flags. One advice that I love in this regard, in the regard of the question that you asked, is the right compromises feel like teamwork and the wrong compromises feel like self-betrayal. Now, is there a framework that you can use for this? I think if the compromises are small, everyday preferences, and if both parties compromise on somewhat of an equal measure, generally in life, those I would say are healthy compromises, like what movie are we going to watch tonight? Who plays the music in the car, and also like bigger compromises like, I want to take a career break right now. Can you support the both of us? Or I want to go study in another city. Do you think you can come with me? And when both partners kind of align on these compromises, these are adjustments that keep things flowing without either person feeling like they're constantly giving up on everything. I think those are healthy compromises. Another example is sharing chores, right? So for example, if you live in a household with another person and you are in charge of cooking, but he's better at cleaning and you divide those chores, that's teamwork. Compromises where you make your life better by coming together as a team without one person carrying the whole load, I would say are healthy compromises. But if a relationship requires you to compromise on your values, on your ambition, on your goals constantly, on things that are really important to you, or make you compromise on things that shatter your emotional safety or make you feel constantly on edge, I think those would be considered red flags. For instance, abandoning your career or your education because your partner wants, but they're not willing to compromise in an equal measure for something that you want, right? Or if, let's say, your partner wants you to be a stay-at-home spouse, or tolerate disrespect or mistreatment to keep peace in the house, right? Those are examples of unhealthy compromises, or what I would call red flag compromises. Things that involve emotional gaslighting or manipulation, where you are the one person who's constantly compromising without the other person having any regard for your emotional growth, emotional safety, or if those things would be red flags. Just remember that a healthy compromise will make your relationship stronger and both of you will feel that strength. But red flag compromises will slowly chip away at your self-worth, trying to erase who you are, and that is not the situation that you want to be in. And this brings me to question number 3. How do I know the difference between real love and just infatuation or attachment? From what I've experienced in the last 10 years of my own life, through my own relationships, through observing other people's relationships, is that real love that lasts very long often has a few common characteristics, right? And we discussed them in the previous point. So real long-lasting love will feel safe. And it is not a slow burn safe, like initially you feel butterflies and then later on it goes on and feels safe. Somebody who's capable of real love or actual love, or being in an actual relationship with you, will have the capacity to make you feel safe from the get-go, right? It will be respectful from the get-go for both partners in the equation. It will feel secure from the get-go. There's no one-upping, there's no trying to make the other person feel jealous, things like that. Real love will also support your growth, your dreams, your individuality, as you will do for them. It will give you space when you need it. Again, like I said, we've discussed all of this. It will make you feel happy, grounded, safe, at home. But all of these things often don't exist when you are like infatuated or just attached to somebody superficially, right? Because a lot of the times you will observe that attachment or infatuation comes from a fear-based place. It is fear-driven. Fear of not finding anybody else, or fear of being rejected, fear of not being liked. You feel clingy, you feel anxious, you are constantly worried about that, whether that person, likes you, is the right one for you. Do they still find you attractive? Will they love you if you do XYZ? Yeah, but one thing to remember here is that when you enter a relationship, initially some of these feelings are natural, right? Some of these feelings of questioning whether this person likes me or not because you're not inherently sure ekdam se, but it's never so big or so loud that you would consider it a red flag. If you talk to anybody who's gotten married to a person that they love, or who's been married for a while, and you speak to them about, how did you know if this was real love or if this was just infatuation? Sure, it starts as attraction where you're chemically bonding to each other and you're developing, that sincere bond. But the basic tenets of that love still remain, right? there's respect, there's space to be yourself, there is, trust, there is enough of like a safe space to grow, and you're not judged for being yourself. So all of those tenets I think are important when you get infatuated or attached with somebody initially also, because those feelings tend to fade over time. If they form the overwhelming majority of how you feel in a relationship, then this means that you either have attachment issues or you're just not with the right person. And one thing to also remember here is that it's not just a feeling, right? It is a practice. Love is a practice. Love is a verb. It's an action. It's not a noun. It's something that you build through the course of your life. But like I said, the basic tenets still remain. It cannot be built by people who are not willing to put in the work. You cannot fully experience real love until you worked on yourself, or at least are working on yourself. Because as hard as this sounds, if you do not love yourself deeply, you will not know how you deserve to be loved and what to expect out of a loving relationship. Coming to question number 4 and the final question for this video. I saw a couple of variations of this, which is why we're taking it here. How do I move on in a healthy way? I'm trying to figure out a way to tell you this without it sounding robotic, right? Moving on is not about feeling or forgetting them overnight, forgetting somebody you were with overnight, because when you are moving on, you're not just moving on from the person, you're also moving on from the version of your life you thought you were building with that person, right? You're giving up a lot of your dreams and your reality that was built around that person, which is why you need to give yourself permission to heal. And I know that sounds like a, therapy BS, but it's not. A lot of the times people stay stuck in this breakup limbo because they feel like they don't deserve to move on from this other person, right? But if you continue to feel like you don't deserve to move on and you don't deserve to find love again, you're going to stay stuck in that space a lot longer. So sure, you have to feel the grief. You will feel the grief. You will cry. You will miss them. And that's okay. When you let go of a person, all of these are very natural things that happen. Ideally, you would remove reminders that keep reopening that wound or keep reminding you of that person. And you try and fill your days with people, with routines, with activities that allow you to get back in touch with yourself, to allow you to enjoy life without needing that extra person in your life, okay? I have made a full video on moving on, talks about heartbreak and how to move on from heartbreak. So I highly recommend that you go check it out if you are somebody who is going through this right now. I am very sorry. I'm sending you lots of hugs and a lot of love. I hope that you heal quickly and that you're able to get back to your true self. But I would highly recommend watching this video because it could really help. And that was it for this video, you guys. I hope that I was able to answer some of your more pressing questions. There are a lot of questions around YouTube as well, YouTube growth, etc. But I think that warrants a separate video in and of itself. I talk about a lot of YouTube growth on the InVideo channel. If you guys are not aware, I make videos for InVideo. Although that caters to a very specific type of creator on YouTube, there is some advice in there that can be applied to every channel, anybody who's trying to grow on YouTube. But besides that, I will make a dedicated video if you are interested on growing your own YouTube channel, getting started with YouTube, even though there's a lot of information out there. If you guys want to hear it from me, from the horse's mouth, I'll do that for you. And yeah, I'll figure out how to do it because most people on this channel do not relate with that content. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to be mindful of all of you guys who are on here. So we'll see how we figure that out. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If it did, if it helped you in any way, make sure to give it a thumbs up because that really helps it reach more people. And yeah, check out the breakup video if you're going through this. And I'm gonna see you guys very soon, actually next week, with another one. Bye.